are going to discuss about alternate raw materials. Everybody knows last 2 years, the dynamics for carbohydrate sources in animal feed industry had changed a lot. Now the carbohydrate or oils and fats, the prices are linked to fuel oil prices. So we have to accept the fact as the fuel oil prices will move on, our raw material sources are definitely going to move upwards or downwards. The ethanol, Government of India, they have targeting that 20% minimum addition of ethanol into petrol by 2030. With this, 117 ethanol plants, they are sanctioned, they will be activated, and they will be consuming maize, which is a main raw material for our feed industry. At the same time, for biofuel, the edible oil or edible part of a fraction of a oil, it will be used to manufacture biodiesel. So the biodiesel prices, it is free to sell, so it will be as per the diesel prices in India. But at the same time, ethanol prices, government will be controlling, but it will be as per the fuel oil prices. So we need to understand, we need to accept the fact that our raw material now, they don't depend on what is the harvesting, how is the rains, then what is the hectareage under cultivation, but it will be related to another dynamics which will be a fuel oil. So we need to know that, we need to accept that, and here the most needed thing is alternate raw materials which can be used in our industry as a feed ingredient. So we have very nice panelists over here, and since they have reduced the time, I don't take much of a time, and I ask Mr. Rees to start his presentation.
Thanks very much, everybody. Thank you, Babaji, for the lead up there. Thank you, Divyaji, for the introduction. That's very kind of you. And thanks to the members of CLFMA for coming today, and thank you for your warm welcome today and always. Again, my name is Rees Kennedy. I'm the Regional Director for South Asia for the U.S. Grains Council, based in New Delhi, India. I think many of you know Mr. Amit Sachdev. He's been a friend of the industry for a very, very long time. He's worked for us for almost 30 years now, so we're very proud of him and all the effort he's put in. Yep, absolutely. A round of applause for Amit. Yep. So we are friends of the industry. What we want to see in India is the growth of the animal feed sector. We do have our office in Delhi, so anytime that you feel that you may need help, advice, or consultations of any kind, feel free to give us a call. We are here to benefit you, and that is how we feel about the Indian feed sector. And so, with that, Balaji, you talked very much about what's happening in the ethanol space and what that means for the feed sector. Obviously, there's been some monumental changes since last December, as corn has been diverted to the ethanol blending program in India and what that's meant for animal feeders. I would say the poultry sector's probably been impacted the most, but that is not to diminish the impact that's happened on the dairy and aquaculture and other feed sectors here in India. So I do want to talk a bit today about some alternative feedstocks that are emerging. We do have sorghum, or that's jowar, so you'll hear sorghum a lot. I think many of you are familiar with jowar. We do want to talk about what's here in India, but also what is available abroad in the United States. And then we're going to talk about DDGS. So particularly maize-based DDGS, we're going to focus today. The US does have ample supply, but I also think it's important that the supplies that are being generated in India be used. So we'll talk a bit about both origins. So this sorghum, this is what jowar looks like in the United States. It is a very uniform crop cultivated in rows. In India, you might see smaller land holdings planting jowar, maybe less uniform rows, maybe not as industrial of a crop as we have in the United States. In the US, sorghum is treated very much like a very, very important cash crop that is used for a variety of purposes. So when you look at global sorghum production by country, India it used to actually produce more sorghum than the United States. The US today is the largest sorghum producer in the world. Nigeria would be number 2, and there's India there with that red glowing line below. So India is no stranger to sorghum. I think many of you may eat khichdi or other dishes that involve jowar, involve sorghum, and you may know it in your personal diets, but it is another wonderful ingredient for animal feed as well. So we don't want to ignore it when we're looking at ways that we can replace maize in animal diets. When you look at sorghum exports by country, the U.S. is far and away the largest sorghum exporter. During our drought year of 2011, 2012, we did see Argentina export a little bit more, but generally speaking, the United States is the largest sorghum exporter in the world. This year we're slated to do about 6.6 million metric tons. The vast majority of that is going to China. There are very small quantities that may go to Mexico because of some of the logistical advantages that may be there for some of our crop that's grown in the southern United States, and then very small quantities that are going to Japan. But primarily, all of that is going to the Chinese feed market, where they are using sorghum in place of maize due to some restrictions they have on trade policy. I do want to talk a little bit about the differences between U.S. sorghum and Indian sorghum. So I have marketed sorghum in India. I have spoken with nutritionists about using jowar or Indian sorghum in animal feed diets. What we have found is that there is a valuation on the product that's about 80 to 85% the value of maize, and there is a lack of understanding that sorghum can be used to fully replace maize in the animal feed diet. And I believe using Indian jowar, that may very well be true because of the tannin content in the grain itself. In India, there are some issues with birds that come and maybe pick at the crops that are in the field, so the seed companies still do include seeds that have tannin in them. In the United States, our seeds are tannin-free. We do normally use sorghum to fully replace corn in many diets, so depending on pricing in the United States, we will see sorghum go into animal feed diets at a 100% replacement of maize. Generally speaking, in studies that we've done, we find U.S. sorghum, because of the low tannin or tannin-free nature of it, we find it to be about 98 to 100% the value of sorghum, or the value of corn, excuse me, depending on what stage the animal is in or what species the animal is. I do want to back up and say that U.S. sorghum is non-GMO. So when you look at exporting raw materials or coarse grains to India, GMO becomes the chief concern. Sorghum in the United States is non-GMO, so this really could be a great solution for animal feed producers in India to look at as they look at ways to have access to coarse grains and increased raw material flows that can lower their feed costs in times when India is still kind of figuring out its ethanol policy. We're seeing shifts in acreage to corn here in India, but there's a lot of uncertainty, and sorghum can definitely be that stopgap for people as they look to progress during this time of high maize prices. So this is corn DDGS. This is what corn DDGS storage looks like in the United States. In India, I know that DDGS is primarily stored in bags. We are actually trying to encourage maize DDGS to be stored a bit more like this. This may be a larger warehouse than many people have access to, but there are still opportunities for storage to look more like this here in India to increase the quality of product. So I think we talked about the ethanol blending program in India. Indian corn DDGS production has exploded. So as we've moved toward that E20 goal that was set forth by Minister Puri and the Prime Minister's office, India started driving up their sugar prices. There were some concerns about how high those sugar prices could go, and so the government last December said that we need to look toward grain ethanol, but we don't want to take rice off of people's plates. We don't want to take chawal off the plate, so we'll move and we'll encourage corn to be the most important feedstock in grain-based ethanol. So in 2024, India is likely to use 5 million metric tons of corn for ethanol production. Last year, India was a 3 million metric ton exporter. Now perhaps they'll import 1.5 million to almost 2 million tons this coming year, which has driven the corn prices to 30 rupees per kg, which a lot of you are experiencing. But this also means that there are 1.6 million metric tons of corn DDGS that are available in the country, and we do believe that number is likely to grow in the coming years as more corn gets diverted to the ethanol sector. So I want to just say it's very important that Indian feed producers look to DDGS as a viable ingredient to sustain your operations. Current price is about 14 to 15 rupees per kg, obviously a lot cheaper than corn and some other raw materials. My last slide here is looking at maximum inclusion rates. So starter broilers 6%, grower finishers 12%, layers 15%. Aqua is species dependent, but Vaname, obviously a very important shrimp that's farmed here in Southeast India, would be 10%. Carp can be as high as 25%, the Indian major carp. Swine looking at 25% in growing and 20% finishing. Dairy is 30% of the ration. Do want to flag one thing on aflatoxin. Obviously that's a major concern. So I do encourage everybody form relationships with suppliers and test. Make sure you have a high quality product that's low aflatoxin. In the US, we produce about 50 million metric tons of distillers grains per year and export to over 40 countries, between 10 and 12 million metric tons, so an ample supply in the US as well. Thank you for your time. Thank you for coming. Looking forward to the panel discussion.
Thank you, Riz, for your nice presentation. Question and answer, we do it later, right? Okay. So then I request Ajay Jundunwala Saab to do a presentation for each subject.
Good morning to the distinguished gathering here. And thanks CLFMA for inviting me to give this deliberation. At SCA, we are more focused on vegetable oil and its S&Ds. To start with, I'm not a feed person, so I will just give you an overview of the oilseed sector in the world and as well as in India. So first I will talk about little bit about the vegetable oil. India, as you know, is heavily dependent upon the import. We are dependent up to extent of 65% for our edible oil requirement. And after that, we need additional 1 million tons of vegetable oil every year, which is a huge task. And that is because our oilseed yields in India are very low, roughly 35 to 40% of world average. Major oilseed crops: soya, rapeseed, sun, secondary cotton, rice bran, and now we have a palm oil mission also in India. In India, we have low oilseed production because we are not paying our farmers the good prices. And we are unable to even maintain the MSP announced by the government, in case of soya in particular. Recent duty hikes in vegetable oil, 20% from present 5.5, government has taken this major action to motivate the oilseed farmers, and particularly for soya, so that our production and acreage increases. And that's why the MSP for the prevailing prices for soya seed it's gone to 4,400 rupees or 44 rupees a kg to now 48 to 49 rupees a kg. Now we have a national mission on oil seeds as well as national mission on palm also. Now I'll just brief you regarding the factors affecting the oil seeds, because oil seeds, whatever effect oil seed will in turn lead to meal production. The first is weather, global warming, like the present hotness in this Brazil, the fire in Brazil, the carbon credit policies, EUDR, which is reducing land and resources, regulations, crude petrol linked to biodiesel. The petrol prices in the next year, what we learned is, will remain $60 to $80, so it is not bullish. Biodiesel mandates, particularly in two major economies of vegetable oil or meal, you can say. One is Brazil and second is Indonesia. And one more factor nowadays is because of the financial status or the forex reserves, most of the countries are now inward looking. So they are more into their self-consumption. Now again, the last one is the geopolitics scenario, US election coming. Now we come to the meal. What statistics we have at SCA, that soya is going to increase all over the world, and we have yesterday only we have a conference. So the experts are mentioning that we are going to have at least 15 million tons of extra soya meal this year from Brazil, from Argentina, from US. So this is a very good news for the gathering here, that the prices normally $380 FOB Argentina, and the prices here is $480 around, the soya meal, export prices FOB Kandla, may go down in the next 1 year to $100. Well, that is a big news. So we are going to see a year having very less oil and high meal. And rapeseed and sun meal is going to reduce by 5 million tons, but net effect is still will be 14 to 15 million tons. Now coming to India, as time is running out, I will just go fast. Soya, we are expecting a better crop here this year, because it is expanding to Karnataka, Maharashtra, even Gujarat also. Meal production is will be around 8 million tons. The export this year is good, but in future whether we will be able to maintain it, that we have to see. And now the question is of GM variety. There's a lot of debate in India about GM. So we are recommending to the government that we should go for GM. And as far as GM is concerned, what I learned during my visits to Brazil and Argentina, that GM is not necessarily required to hike the production. GM variety mainly gives the stability of production, the pest resistance of the seed and other qualities. So according to what we learned, that GM is very much required in India because we have a different sort of problems. And for this surplus meal, we are expecting in India also, particularly in soya and rapeseed. Rapeseed exports are coming down gradually. So we are recommending government to give a subsidy for exports. Regarding biodiesel and ethanol, I just want to mention here that ethanol is not good for feed industry, because it take out maize and take out the energy from the maize. But biodiesel is good for the industry, for feed industry. More biodiesel means more meal. As Brazil is going very heavily for biodiesel, they have a very ambitious plan in next 5 years. So they need more oil. More oil means more meal will be generated. So biodiesel is very good for the feed industry, for price point of view. Then we have a rapeseed meal. The acreage is going up because of the good prices. So rapeseed meal will be in abundance, but because there is a problem of bitterness and the uses limitation, I think the scientists here will do something about it and increase the uses. And SCA is also tying up with institute like IITR to solve this problem. Now coming to rice bran de-oiled meal. Rice bran de-oiled is dependent upon the government procurement of paddy and the processing and the export policy of rice so that the processing of paddy happens. So it is basically related to government intervention, but the crop is good. Now it is groundnut and cotton. Groundnut is also increasing to some limitation, to some extent, say 15% at least, but cotton is reducing. Now since time is over, I just come to the main point, the DDGS. So DDGS is the factor which everyone is having a look how it plays out. But in nutshell, I can say for the next 2 years, the feed industry is going to have a very good time. So with these words, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jhunjhunwala sir. So more or less you have given a price outlook or a crop outlook. Thank you very much. I will request Anupa Veluswamy to take over.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm Anupa. I'm from Coimbatore. We are into BSFL. It's not this one. Okay, fine. So we are into BSFL farming. First, let me just introduce what BSFL is. It's a fly in itself, and the larvae part of the fly is being used to process waste. Waste in the sense, any wet waste can be processed with BSFL, which is very much important for India because we face a huge need of the hour to process the wet waste. So it can be in slaughterhouse waste, it can be vegetable or mandi waste, so everything can be processed with BSFL. What we get out of it is like a biomass of BSFL larvae, which is an excellent protein source, and basically it has a good immunity booster for the livestock. And apart from that, we have the compost also out of BSFL. So this is the life cycle. Just to give an intro, this larvae in poultry, who is involved in poultry to know around the poultry fields, they would have seen the larvae of BSFL. So it's a total life cycle which need to be controlled for a higher commercial production. But why we go for BSFL is a question. The reason is it doesn't compete, it doesn't require any feed ingredients or feed source to be processed, and it is nutritional, it is not a pest, and it is small in size, which involves the storability. It itself is a pellet sort of, so in certain applications we can directly feed this BSFL. So nutritional wise, it has a wide spectrum of amino acids. And again, fatty acid profile, very high in uric acid, directly impacting the immunity booster for the livestock. So beyond the test reports, what we require, test reports we have certain parameters, and being an insect protein, there are certain parameters we need to analyze. Even for protein test in insect-based source, the protein extractions is slightly different. So we just have to focus more on trials to exactly know the potential of BSFL. So that's what we see in the trials. And Indian scenario trials is more to be done. What we see is close to 50% of fish meal replacement that has been required, and improved performance has been seen. And by 2030, at least 10% commercial replacement of fish meal is being looked at globally. And 3 to 5% as a supplemental inclusion, mainly because of the high immunity response that this feed triggers in the animals. So supplement application is much more viable currently. It's invariable for all the livestock, from aqua to animals. Even for cattle, certain percentage of inclusion has been recommended. Swine, again, trials, abroad world trials has been done. So the three main factors to impress that as a supplement is the antimicrobial peptides. It accumulates because of the environment. It grows in waste. So the environment in which it grows, it accumulates a lot of antimicrobial peptides in itself. So that is in turn is getting used in the animals. And chitin is again, to certain extent, is again antimicrobial activity is being imposed. And uric acid content, very similar to coconut oil, it would be only fat, animal source fat, where uric acid content is such high. So all these are like boost the immunity for the animals. So can it replace fish meal or soya? I would say theoretically maybe. That's what the industry is pushing, but practically the volume required, there is a constraint, because this is just an emerging industry. The growth of or the farming of BSFL is evolving. Especially in India, we have lagged maybe around 10 years we are back compared to the rest of the world. But when in India, if it catches up, it will be fast. That's my understanding. Why? Because we have the local market itself for BSFL as a feed source, and we have a huge tons of waste which need to be processed properly. Even biogas units won't be able to handle the mixed waste that we generate in our urban area, which this particular insect efficiently processes. So in both, it's like about two-sided coins. In both the sides, it addresses its best. So again, do we have the volume? Like any other feed ingredient, it has its own constraints, but it can be tackled once we start bringing in the ecosystem that this industry needs. And definitely we require the regulations and government policy supports. I make a urge to the policymakers here, leaders of the industry, that this industry need to have certain level of focus and support from the government, because in one hand, waste is majorly in control of the government, especially urban waste, where this application, BSFL application, give an excellent, efficient way to process the waste and gets applied in our feed industry itself. So that is a win-win. So why in India? Like what is the favorable condition is, like in climatic wise, we don't require a controlled unit like it is in other part of the world. So this will be a very economical production of BSFL is possible in India. And effective wet waste processing is a need of an hour. Government invest a lot in bringing in the proper wet waste processing effectively. So this is one important tool which we have to look into. And we have local market, and as been discussed, there is a shift in the feed industry. Like when ethanol production is happening, we are slowly moving into the spent grains, right? The consumption of spent grains. So when there is there should be some nutritional adjustments that is required, which BSFL can play a part of. And also, practically when we see use of DDGS, mostly it started happening. And most of the time I could see that it's happening in wet condition. So storability wise also that is an issue, and practically there could be contaminations in the DDGS before transportation or in storage. Those products, those volume of product can be fed or given a second life with BSFL, because BSFL can process this and nullify the toxins or contaminations that the material has, and we can use that biomass again to the feed. So that is the magic happening in BSFL microbiota, in the gut microbiota, that it nullifies most of the toxins, and also even it is used in bioremediations, where the heavy metals is been subsidized to a certain extent. So that application wise also we can use BSFL. So volume will be achieved when all these applications with BSFL is done. Again, BSFL, when each process from light to dried and from dried to defatted meal, each process increases the economical cost involved. So BSFL being a pellet in itself can be used directly as a live or in frozen format. So that, because it's again wet condition, so as industry moves, maybe there could be a option of using that in wet condition itself or in live feed as such. So the conclusion is we have to start looking BSFL in nutritional wise also and also in applications where our trend in feed itself is changing and it's more than a commodity and we have to focus BSFL as a supplement. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, ma'am. We will discuss what is the economic feasibility of this product considering other protein sources on later date. Let us finish on the last presentation by Dr. Shinde.
Yeah, thank you, Bhavesh sir. So good morning, all of you. So I'll start where Reese said left, right? So what I'll do is I'll share our Indian perspective of what analysis reports we have for DDGS and the way forward on the issues. Okay, thank you. Okay, first let me make a standing comment, right? DDGS is one of the most or best ingredient to have in terms of nutrients, right? So lots of proteins, energy coming from fat, good source of phosphorus. But now coming to the challenges, right? So lots of variability. So you can see like, the average min max, variability in protein, variability in fat, variability in color. So right from golden yellow to the darker shade of brown. So the point here is all as an industry, the distillers have to, do a lot of learning. We all are learning. So they'll have to standardize the processes. So what this drying thing does is it has an impact on in vitro protein digestibility. So I'll park this, I'll take it up in the next slide. But then I want to put a lot of effort on the burning point, that's aflatoxin in DDGS. So this data is our own internal data, 110 samples. Best sample we had is 7.5, 2 samples under 10, maybe another 10 odd samples closer to 30, 50, but all the other samples were more than 100. Okay, more than 100. So I sit on the BIS committees, right? So we were debating the specifications for BIS. And they are saying 50. I said, come on, how is that possible? Show me. And I'm challenging them with data. They said, you find your way. You reject the batches. So if I go by that logic, out of 110 truckloads, I'll have to reject 85% truckloads. So that's significant. And think, so at this moment, roughly 1.5 million tons of ethanol DDGS being produced. So let's take where will this go? Obviously, poultry will use like 2 to 3 or max 5%. High toxin levels, they'll not afford. Dairy, okay, people will use. But my concern is, even if the feed industry will not use it, still this ingredient will find entry in the market. And that's going to be a concern. That's going to be a serious health concern for the future. So milk processors, so we know that 35% of our industry is organized, so 65 is still unorganized. So imagine the impact. It's cheap in wet form. Farmers can buy at 5-6 rupees a kg. It doesn't make economic sense for them. Still at a dry matter basis, if they are still paying equivalent to or closer to the feed, what the feed will cost. But that aflatoxin load ends up into the milk and that will circulate in the human chain. So policy decision makers, this is going to be a long-term risk. Okay, so another interesting point. So maybe Bhavesh, I'll need more time. This is really critical. So we were analyzing, our experience. We were analyzing with various quick scan methods. And we were surprised. So we used to get lower aflatoxin through the quick scan methods, ELISA methods. Still our feed was higher aflatoxin when we were analyzing by HPLC. and it's mess, we have to reject. So for those who really make 20 ppb feed, it's like hats off to you. It's a really hard work. And when we were doing a RCA, we found that DDGS, when we analyze the same samples by HPLC, the value is like 3-4 times. So quick scan methods cannot or don't give the good results beyond 30. They always say 30 or 40, but in reality, that batch load had aflatoxin of more than 150. So this came as a surprise to us. So that's why I thought I'll share this experience so that whoever are doing through quick scan methods should really migrate to HPLC methods. Okay. So now coming to that IVPD. Okay, so let's consider the standard IVPD, in vitro protein digestibility or amino acid digestibility. So we have a way of getting these results through NIR. So what this indicates is, and the next line is amino acid digestibility. Say the best would be like 79% digestibility. That's the standard used in US as well. But if I consider the average, so what this means is amino acid, the IVPD of 2.5 translate into amino acid digestibility of 50. Now compare this. Okay, so suppose your corn DDGS has a 30% protein digestibility of say 50%. So it's close to say 15 odd percent of digestible protein. Now come to a protein ingredient like rapeseed meal. Rapeseed meal has an IVPD of 7. So 70% digestibility. Now 70% times 36 is easily 25. Now at the unit cost of protein digestibility, you can easily find out that rapeseed meal is a much cheaper option compared to using DDGS. And that's for poultry, that's very critical. Now let's look at the mindset, right? So we have a mindset that DDGS sasta hai yaar, chalo sasta use kar lete hai. So but the point I want to make is we as feed millers have to think beyond ingredients. Okay, we have to focus on nutrients. So we have to look at what do you need from that ingredient, right? We need starch, we need say sugar or amino acids. Okay, so the focus should shift from ingredient mindset to nutrient mindset, and then look at best sources for those ingredients. Okay, so this is just a comparison of distiller's grain versus the cow requirement in the diet. So again, it's always good in lot of ingredients. I'll skip this. The important point I want to make here is it has a lot of fat, unsat fat, and probably Bhavya would be really interested in knowing this. So, okay, so unsat fat, most of it coming from linoleic acid, 18-2. Okay, so why is this critical? This has a significant impact on the Indian conditions, right? So if anyone who are dairy nutritionist will know that Indian cows' rumen pH is really low because of the feeding management various aspects, right? So under low pH or acidic pH conditions, this linoleic acid 18-2 converts into CLA. And this CLA, even at the quantities of 4 grams, mind you 4 grams, can cause a significant drop in milk fat from say by 20-25%. That's significant. Of cow milk fat of 4 can drop down to 3.2. Okay, so why is this critical? Farmers are paid or they get paid based on fat and SNF. So if you translate this, even 100 grams of corn DDGS can cause this milk fat depression. So that's significant. So nutritionists who are really looking at this ingredient, you will have to look in a wider way. So what's the solution? So the solution here is there is opportunity for distillers to really take out this fat, and it can be used in different industries, biofuel or others. But that will also add more value to this ingredient by increasing the protein, say, to 40-42%. Okay. So from the nutritional point, I'll move to the operations side. So this ingredient is not an easy ingredient to manage, right? So up to 10 for dairy cattle feed producers, up to 10-12%, it can be easily managed. because the quantity availability is low, quite high, prices are quite low, everyone wants to challenge higher levels. So our observation is, and I can easily see it in the market, is pellets, they get soft, easily broken down. So the PDI is reduced, the pellet hardness, it is reduced. Lot of fines increase in bag. So traveling in the market, wherever I go, I see these days lot of fines available in bags. And you'll have to imagine, like a feed bag produced at the plant is dropped and picked up at least 4 times, right? At the plant, then it's loaded in the truck, goes to the distributor, channel partner, unloaded there, again gets loaded, taken, picked up by the farmer or another channel partner and loaded at the farm site. So that causes a lot of fines. Okay. In addition to that, what we have noticed is this ingredient cannot be easily pelleted. So a lot of throughput reduction has been observed by 20-25%. And in addition to that, there are a lot of plant stoppages. So finally, what's the way forward? So I'm pretty sure this ingredient is here to stay. In fact, yesterday Balram sir had said 5 million tons, 10 going to 10 million by 2030. I spoke to a few distillers, colleagues, they say 10 million next 2 years. And since if you look at that 10 million, 2.5 million tons of corn DDGS is going to be available. Okay, with that, if you take out 8% of your fat, that's again going to be a significant quantity for biofuel. So the point here is we all have, all stakeholders, be it the farmer, the government, corn growers, feed millers, distillers, all stakeholders have to work on a common platform so that one, we set up a sustainable corn supply chain of good quality, work on the harvesting, drying and storage facilities so that good quality corn is produced, and then that will translate into a good quality low aflatoxin DDGS. In addition to that, distillers have to really work on standardizing, optimizing the temperature time combinations so that they give DDGS which is really digestible and valuable to the feed industry. A comment for the feed people, you have to think beyond ingredients. You have to think beyond proximate as well. You have to use the latest technologies, NIR, ensure you go beyond proximate and use the new tools available. And at the end, we all are learning. DDGS is new to us. We had observed some safety incidences as well. So we all have to learn and ensure that this ingredient there is more research. So I request the university guys also to support in this research. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. So, Dr. Shinde, I have one question. When you say you take out the oil from DDGS, so it contains around 7 to 8% of corn oil. So whether anybody has, this question is to Junjunwala Sahab also, and he has done hexane extraction of DDGS. So hexane extracted DDGS, this may be reducing the aflatoxin or toxicity level because of the input temperatures and hexane. So have anybody tried defatted DDGS?
Actually, this DDGS concept is new, but some rice bran processors have tried it by mixing DDGS with the rice bran initially and then extracting it.
Oh.
So that the fiber and protein and everything improves. Though our association has issued advisory not to do so because it has 2 problems. One, you have asked about aflatoxin. Aflatoxin doesn't get reduced because once the fungus has taken place, after the extraction or roasting it or doing any treatment to it, it normally doesn't reduce, what I know.
Okay.
And second, this oil which comes out from the DDGS is also hamper quality of the original oil of the rice bran. So as an association, we are not encouraging that practice.
Generally speaking, in the ethanol production realm, it is understood that once a mycotoxin enters your plant, there is nothing you can do about it. So the best practice for ethanol producers is to work on mitigation tactics in terms of procurement. I think you said that very well, the sustainable supply chain, right? That is essential. And so, what we look at as the U.S. Grains Council is the feed industry needs to take a bit of responsibility in ensuring their own supply chain by working directly with ethanol producers and not through traders. Because if you can work with an ethanol producer directly and ensure that supply chain from farm to ethanol plant to your feed manufacturing facility, you have a much higher chance of encountering a higher quality product that has lower aflatoxin, that has more consistent nutritional metrics. I mean, the list goes on and on. So definitely want to encourage the feed manufacturing plants in India to work directly with ethanol manufacturers to ensure that supply chain.
And one more thing, what I came to know during discussions with a lot of people, that when the maize is harvested, either it is immediately gone to for processing, otherwise the moisture content, which is 17% around, will spoil it as far as aflatoxin is concerned. So when you see this maize to starch units, which produces starch, they don't have this aflatoxin problem.
So again, I have mentioned that BSFL will play a role here once there is a volume in DDG's process where BSFL in gut microbiota, it can reduce or nullify the aflatoxin present in the substrate. So that is a direct upscale that can be done using this particular larvae. So again, improvement in the protein quality, and also we can use suppose if there is a batch that's got spoiled, it can get reprocessed via BSFL, and again the biomass can be used as a BSFL larvae than directly using the DDGs. So that is one application we have to look into, and that will definitely evolve as DDGs industry evolves and also on the BSFL as it evolves.
So, any questions? We can start a few.
Cost economics of BSFL, right now BSFL meal, defatted BSFL meal is trading at 120 rupees per kg. 120. That is a very small, we are very handful of manufacturers of BSFL as such, and the processing is in a very, very limited quantity. But as the industry grows, this economics will play a role. Volume of scale will definitely play a role in reducing the price. And
up to what level? Reducing up to what level? This 120?
I won't say it will.
50% of this?
So fish meal, if you say it is trading around that price, and it has reached even 143 in Thoothukudi based price at certain point. So we can keep the price below fish meal, that is possible.
But fish meal, this dairy industry is not using fish meal. And now neither this BSFL will going to use in the fish meal, this dairy industry. It will be only used in the poultry industry only. Or
Poultry
in the
and
pet food,
aqua.
Or in the pet food.
That's true. That's true. Poultry and aqua is a major possibility where animal protein is much of a need.
This is too expensive. And if you are saying this 120 rupees per kg or this is, I don't think so it will be viable for any industry to use it.
Right. Cattle usage maybe as a supplement, not more than 1 or 2%, not as a mainstream replacement.
Cattle, it is not possible because it is banned. Animal product, we cannot use, animal protein, we cannot use in the cattle industry.
Yeah. Agreed, sir.
And
agreed.
Then coming again to the poultry, because I am a man from poultry also.
Right.
So poultry, again, it is very expensive. Already the poultry feed cost is around 35 to 40 rupees a kg.
Right.
If 120 rupees, if at the bulk level we start manufacturing, it will be around 60 rupees a kg, not less than that, in any case.
Yeah, so point well taken. Again, we'll have to change that mindset from ingredient to nutrient. Okay, so if BSF provides good quality of amino acid, why not? Okay, you'll have to run that value, so you'll not find it expensive. Again, there's a different way of looking at it, right? from one side it
But
looks
sir-
expensive.
But sir, its cost should be about something around.
So we can discuss
near
that.
to the good
I can
quality
give you,
proteins
I
also
can show you
available.
I can show you a parametric run wherein you can, if good amino acid profile product will really give, even if it's expensive, it will find space in the formula. I can share it with you later. Yeah.
So there are different formats also which I want to address. In poultry, we directly don't, the price increases as the process increases. In poultry, we don't have to do that. In poultry, we can directly feed live larvae, locally sourced. And waste is available locally, which need to be processed. So when that is done, it is below price of maize. That is possible with BSFL. The live larvae or frozen format, we can give the BSFL below the price of, but you can't equate the protein percentage directly with the price. Some people argue that soya protein, 1% of protein, it's equivalent to 1 rupee. So can this be? No, we can't argue in that way. Because the mass varies, the weight varies, and moisture content varies, but the quality, again, as Sir said, the quality is different. So if you are directly talking on to the price and the inclusion of BSFL, then we have to look into the format, whether we can use it as a live feed. And for poultry, live insect is not something new, which is very, very nutritional, and they have evolved for that inclusions.
Ma'am, I have a question.
Yes.
What are the challenges you are facing to scale BSFL production to scale to
Right.
commercial levels? What are the challenges? Because we've used BSFL, we've run some experiments, we've got
Right.
some data.
Right.
I want to listen to you. What are the challenges you're facing to scale it to a commercial level?
Right. Right now, government is of support with the BSFLs. Slowly, government recognition for BSFL units started, and couple of municipals have started using BSFL to mitigate their urban waste. So waste is the starting point for BSFL. And the waste we are talking is not just something that is pure, it's like a mixed waste. And that is exactly what we have to address using BSFL, because there is a problem there. So when we go for a mixed waste, collection, processing and handling of mixed waste is the biggest challenge, but that will evolve as it becomes more, at least in certain stages, it becomes automated, and the entire industry will get fragmented, where production units will form, like hatcheries and growouts will form, and that will evolve as the industry evolves. So waste handling is the major challenge here, yes.
Ma'am, I would like to correct you. Here, ma'am, in front of you.
Yes.
I would like to correct you. The present price of fish meal is below 100. And which you said 143 is 1.5%. And say 150%. That's mine.
Thank you so much for that correction, sir. What I'm trying to say is, fish meal has evolved a lot. It's a big industry in itself, and BSFL has just started, especially in India. We are already lagging. Globally, we need to catch up a lot. At this volume, if we can bring down the price to 120 or even for 140, I would say there is a long way to go, and we can definitely bring down the price as the scale improves.
So would you say that the amino acid profile of BSF would be much better than fish meal?
There is variance, sir. We can't always equate apples and oranges. It's totally
It may be
different.
an alternative.
They're totally a different species.
When
as
the
such.
prices are lower, people think for alternatives, but not when the prices are higher.
Alternatives, but certain part can be included. Suppose if you take BSFL, the omega-3 is low, but omega-6 and 9 is present, like vegetables.
6 is cheaper. Omega-6
Yes,
is cheaper, which is
definitely,
available in the vegetable protein.
I agree, sir. I agree, but omega-3 inclusion can be done in the BSFL substrate to accumulate. So fatty acid profiles gets accumulated. So that can be included.
What
And
about the digestibility?
digestibility is good. The only
80% or 85%?
maybe around 60 to 70%, I believe. The only anti-nutritional aspect is chitin.
All right, thank you.
What is the replacement? Whether here in India we do normally sorghum, bajra, we do 10 to 15% replacement, which we do with the corn. How much maximum we can go with the sorghum replacement? Corn.
Okay, there's quite a few questions there, Ram, and thanks for them. They are important. Quickly, the profile, sorghum is slightly higher protein than corn and slightly lower in starch. It's going to have a similar fat content, so not a huge change there. But when you are formulating with sorghum, you do want to keep in mind that there is a markedly higher protein content. So corn tends to be about 8%-ish protein, or 7 to 8, whereas sorghum may be as high as 9%. So it's not, a protein source, but it does have more protein. It needs to be accounted for when you move into your animal feed rations. In terms of pricing, sorghum is generally valued against domestic corn prices in China. And that, we can go into detail on that, during the later stages in private, but it tends to derive its value from what corn is trading at in China. And for the last, I would say, decade or so, that has generally been higher than U.S. corn prices, with some variation here and there. I will say, as the U.S. decouples from China, there are opportunities, or there are potential changes in trade flows, and that could move sorghum to needing to find a new home. If China is not in the market for sorghum, then sorghum will generally sell anywhere from 92 to 95% the value of corn within the United States for processing, meaning that it would be cheaper than corn on the global market if China is not present. So I always tell potential sorghum buyers, I say you should be watching the US-China relationship, because that actually has a lot to do with what sorghum price will do. Right now, sorghum is about 120% the value of corn. But if China, enacts tariffs like they did in 2018, 2019 on sorghum, or does some sort of, let's say, trade policy movement to not allow sorghum into China, you will see the price of sorghum drop precipitously and overnight. It happens very, very quickly. In terms of the difference between white and red sorghum, in the US we call that yellow grain sorghum, but it does look red. Not a huge difference in nutritional profile, but there is a difference in marketability to consumers. So in the US we do grow white sorghum, but it mainly goes to human food consumption, and it's a much, much smaller crop, whereas the red grain tends to be a much more industrial crop and goes toward processing for animal feed and ethanol production as well. But not a huge difference in terms of nutritional profile.
What about the digestibility of sorghum and corn?
Digestibility?
Right.
Yeah, so sorghum will have a lower AMEN for poultry production. So you will see a lower amount of energy, but again, it's made up with that extra protein. So generally speaking, we see it as slightly below the value of corn because the AMEN is lower. So looking at like 98 to 99% the value of corn, depending, the true nutritional value, depending on what species and what stage of that species life growth cycle you're feeding it to.
Thank you.
Yep.
But in Indian sorghum, which is not a red sorghum, so have you ever compared what is the difference between red sorghum analysis and Indian sorghum?
So the Indian sorghum will look very similar. We have looked at this. It will look very similar. The main difference, and this is the main difference between the U.S. varieties and actually every other variety around the globe, whether it's Indian, Argentinian, Australian, is the tannin content. So there are certain industries like baijiu alcohol production in China that prefers high tannins because it translates to a tastier beverage that we all consume. But animals don't like tannins, right? It reduces the digestibility of the nutrients. So while the nutritional profile will look very similar, the presence of those tannins impacts the digestibility, which makes truly, Indian sorghum, you're looking at about 80 to 85% the value of Indian maize, and a lot of that has to do with that tannin content that's not present in U.S. seed today.
Thank you.
Hello. Madam, coming back to again insects protein. I think that concept is very well accepted. The question is, we would like to understand, how do you position this product in pet food and aqua feed, especially in the shrimp? Number one. Number two, what are the key challenges you face when you deal with these two different species?
Can you come again with the second question?
What are the key challenges you face when you deal with these two different species?
Pet and aqua.
Pet food and aqua shrimp feed.
Okay, in pet food, even multiple formats has been accepted. We start with pulp. Even frozen and pulp is being used in pet food. In their extrusions, instead of adding moisture, they just add the BSFL pulp. So they claim, pet food manufacturers claim it increases the palatability and the acceptance is good. So we start with that format. And it goes in the dried, slow dried BSFL goes for birds, pet birds and exotic birds. And meal inclusion is there in all the extruded pellets. Dog cables, big level, no company has started yet, but in ornamental fish, it's been already done. It's established market in inclusion of BSFL meal, up to 20-25% they are including in the replacement of fish meal. So that is PET, and for aqua, it's just exploring. The main aspect is on the supplemental level. That's what we are pushing, where it can definitely help in antimicrobial activities, reducing the antibiotics that been implemented in the aqua. Especially in shrimp feed is the first target. Shrimp and carnivorous aqua animals is what we are focusing, like morel and sea bass. So again, the market for these carnivorous animal and the way we can implement in shrimp all these commercial feeds is quite challenging, because it being a new ingredient to involve and get into the feed mills is a bit challenging as of now. Pet industry has already seen the performance. They are started including already, especially in ornamental fish. Pet food acceptability is also good. There are brands that has already come with the BSFL meal inclusion as a topper and different formats. And pet food, dogs, especially dogs, the impact on BSFL inclusion is immediately seen, because it is projected and it is a hypoallergenic protein source, a novel protein source. So the effect on dogs' performance is already been there. Suppose there is a certain protein source which becomes allergic for dogs. When it replaced with BSFL meal or BSFL pulp for that matter, as a raw diet also, the change is visible within 1.5 months of inclusion. So that is what we understood from the veterinarians.
Thank you very much. So I thank all the panelists for their illustrative presentation. And those who have more questions, they can meet them personally and discuss with them. So here I end this session, because so many times Dr. Huda is already there looking at me. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Bhavesh Saab. And a big round of applause for everybody, all the panelists. One thing is proven today. एक भाषा जो सबको समझ में आती है वो है the language of money है. So the cost involved, the money involved. Everybody understand the language of money. Okay, I would like to call on the stage our outgoing chairman, Mr. Devra, to felicitate our panelists. First of all, please give a memento to our moderator, Mr. S.V. Bhave. अरे इतना बढ़िया पैनल डिस्कशन में तालियां तो होनी चाहिए. Don't worry, the tea and coffee is waiting for you outside. Next memento to be presented to Mr. Reese H. Kennedy. Thanks, Reese, for such a good information on sorghum. Next memento to be given to Miss Anupa Vellasamy, the young lady taking all the key questions. For Mr. Ajay Junjunwala, President, Solvent Extract Association. And the last, Dr. Prashant Shinde, the young nutritionist. Can we have a photograph, all of you together, please?